David, you're probably one of the most well-known people in the paid search industry. At the same time, you're living in Fort Myers, so not where you would expect these experts in between or right in the middle of the paid search industry. And you haven't built a team of 100 people. What's the philosophy behind what you're doing?
Well, the philosophy behind what I'm doing is two parts, really. Number one is I'm living in a place where most people vacation, which is a dream come true. The other is that I call myself unemployable, and that means that I don't like having bosses. I like being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it, and I'm lucky enough to be in an industry where that's possible, where I can help clients, keep in constant communication with them by electronic means, and everyone's happy.
I think you're pretty familiar with the Google Display Network. First of all, is it possible to drive a similar performance in GDN compared to search? And if so, how do you do this?
So, how do you drive similar performance with GDN as compared to search? The Google Display Network is actually, number one, sometimes more important to advertisers than search is. And I'll give you an example. A new product or a new company for which there is no demand. So let's say a startup that's producing software for which there's no analog, there's no competition, there's not even demand for the segment that the software is in. No one's searching for it. Unless the company has a strong brand, which is doubtful, no one's searching for the brand either. So search is demand fulfillment advertising. In other words, it's just like the yellow pages. Someone is actively looking for something. The job of the advertiser is to fulfill that desire that's already being expressed. Whereas display advertising is demand generation. It's convincing someone that they need to look into something, a product or a service, in the midst of their looking at other content on a page. So that's one example where display is more important than search when it's an unknown product or service. I've also found that with correct targeting that Facebook affords, that Google Display Network has, the messaging can be refined and the audience can be refined such that there's a really, really good match between the ad, the product, service, and the person looking at the ad. So we actually get click-through rates and conversion rates for Google Display Network advertising as we do for search.
If done properly, what would you say is a healthy share of spend to assign to GDN?
Well, that's a good question. How much do you spend on GDN compared to search? Given the fact that done properly, Google Display Network CPAs are lower than for search. In other words, the CPCs, the cost per click, are lower, given the fact that there's so much competition for CPCs on the search side. Frequently, we see that the CPAs for Google Display Network are lower than for search. And in that case, my recommendation is to spend as much as possible on Google Display Network. So really, the allocation of one one budget to search, one budget to GDN, that decision should be made based on profitability. Should be made based on, volume and profitability. Which one can produce the better return on ad spend at a reasonable volume.
We know that there are some search retargeting companies around. What they do is they buy third-party data with user intent, and they use this data to target people in display. Do you know whether Google has already leveraged something like this, or are there any plans that Google would use this data to drive performance in GDN?
So the question is whether Google would use previous search data to inform the placements of ads on the Google Display Network. The answer is really two parts. The answer, number one, is they don't allow an advertiser to explicitly use that data to place Google Display Network advertising. In other words, the advertiser can't say, Google, show my ad only to people that have searched on this search term. That corresponds to one of my keywords, for example. However, the second part is that Google has very powerful automated bid management. They have CPA-based bid management, return on ad spend bid management, and the algorithms for their GDN automated bid management actually takes into consideration automatically previous searches. It's part of the black box that Google uses to predict whether someone looking at an ad is more or less likely to convert. So the short answer is advertisers get it for free if they use Google's automated bid management.
Just interesting point you just raised. Do you think that in search something similar will happen as we saw in social, especially Facebook? That initially there were some bidding tools around on Facebook, but then Facebook started leveraging its own data, and all the bidding tools had to disappear because there was no way to compete against the Facebook data. Do you see something similar happening in AdWords?
So that's a good question, whether the AdWords automated bid management capabilities will put the third parties out of business. I've been predicting that the answer has been yes for many years, and it hasn't put a dent in the business of Marin, Acquisio, Kenshu, etc. And so I guess the answer is no. Uh, and it surprises me that more advertisers don't take advantage of Google's built-in automated bid management. I blame it on Google for not educating the advertising public to how well these tools operate. Furthermore, the third parties usually have a Swiss Army knife philosophy about their software, where bid management is just one of the kind of pillars that the entire platform is based on. Other pillars would be reporting, uh, consolidated reporting, bid management across different platforms, attribution across different platforms. So I guess the answer is the third parties aren't going out of business anytime soon, and they haven't traditionally.
We are very active in the retail space, and you are very familiar with dynamic remarketing. What would you recommend an e-commerce retailer on how to use this remarketing format?
Talking about dynamic remarketing within Google AdWords, very, very powerful capability. I think every e-retailer should be using it kind of alongside shopping campaigns or in conjunction with shopping campaigns. Uh, One of the most powerful aspects of Google's dynamic remarketing is that when a dynamic remarketing campaign is created, Google automatically creates 5 remarketing lists, remarketing audiences that can be used in a very powerful way. I'll give you one example. Google creates a list of people who have put an item into the shopping cart but failed to complete the transaction, so shopping cart abandoners. And when the advertiser directs their campaign to show ads to that population, the images that appear in the ads are, of course, the item that had been left in the shopping cart, but also other images of associated products that people have bought when they've bought the product that's in the shopping cart. So there's a little extra impetus for the person looking at the ad to go back and finish their transaction and maybe even buy some additional products.
So we saw the space evolving quite a bit. So initially it was all keyword driven. Then Google started introducing the Google shopping format. So then you wouldn't bid on keywords anymore, but rather on the product. In addition to that, we see audiences overlapping with the keywords. Do you think that on the long run, keywords will completely disappear?
So will keywords completely disappear? I do not think so. Their function will evolve. In other words, rather than just being the only signal that tells the search engine what is the intent of the search, uh, the behavior, interests, proclivities, associations, etc., of a person will help the search engine understand the intent behind the search. So that's one way where keywords will evolve. It will be an additional signal, not just the only signal that tells the search engine, here's what's being looked for. So the question is, what will the role of keywords diminish or disappear in the future? I think keywords will always be important, whether they are typed or whether they're spoken. They will serve as whereas in the past they served as the only indicator of intent of the person doing the search. Now with the rich amount of data available to search engines through audiences, there will be additional information, or there already is additional information about uh, whoever is doing the search, what their interests are, what their behaviors are, their buying behaviors, their search behaviors, the devices they like to use, the places they live, the times of the day and week and month that they're searching. So there's a rich set of data to augment the keyword related data to inform the search engine's algorithm about what the intent of the searcher is. So the keywords will always be important. Again, whether typed or spoken, their importance will be tangential rather than central.
So we saw the market evolving quite a bit regarding target KPIs. Initially, some businesses went for cost per order, and they realized, okay, whether you are selling socks or a Gucci handbag at $5K, that makes a huge difference, and the cost per order is not the best indicator. So they started incorporating revenue and went for an ROAS. Then others said, okay, interesting, but the margin is important. So whether you are selling underwear at a 70% margin versus laptops at a 5% margin, ROAS is not the right metric, so let's go for an ROI, incorporating the margin data. And the next step of the evolution was kind of, let's aim for repeat purchases and incorporate what you expect from people doing it, throughout their entire lifetime. What do you recommend your clients on which KPIs they should optimize their campaigns for?
Well, ideally, I mean, let's go out into the future a little bit. I think within the next 5 years or so, two things will happen. One is that the software tools, and that could include the platforms, the search platforms like AdWords or Bing Ads, will make it easier for the advertiser to take into consideration lifetime value. This is a huge missing chunk. I mean, basically, it changes the profitability equation entirely. So I'm hoping and I'm predicting that lifetime value data will be used to inform decisions about what investment to make in search. The other data point that I think is really important that's not being used to by many advertisers to make decisions about investment is assisted revenue. The phenomenon where a, a particular set of searches on a keyword generate X number of dollars of direct revenue, but Y number of dollars in revenue if you take into consideration the pathway that the searcher has taken through several different actions to get to the site. So if think about it, if an advertiser or if advertisers in general took into consideration assisted revenue and lifetime value, frequently they would be driving much more volume and much more profit than they think they're driving now. So I almost see an image of the advertiser community as a whole being much more conservative, too conservative than they could be and that they will be in the future.
I actually couldn't agree more. I'm really wondering why Google could miss this opportunity. As you mentioned, it would change the equation entirely. It's a fundamentally different approach, and it would then pay off to invest way more because you get a long-term ROI instead of just focusing on the first purchase.
Well, I can speak to at least part of that with a recent experience. Google recently allowed the advertiser to report right in the dashboard the amount of assisted revenue alongside the amount of direct revenue, and then the advertiser could add up the two for a total conversion value for any given action. Problem is the data is wrong. Consistently, the data is wrong. And I found this out with one of my clients when the client said, "Well, that adds up to a number that I've never seen before. It's much higher than my bank account is showing." So the advertiser community as a whole will not embrace this kind of data until it is closer to reality.
Where do you currently see the bigger bottleneck? Is it the knowledge in the market which is limited? Kind of which are the ideal KPIs? How do you incorporate LTV? Or do you rather see the corporations as the major bottleneck because they are too slow, too rigid, controlling and finance lag behind? They don't understand what's going on. So that's a huge change management effort to introduce these things which apparently make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I definitely see the latter as being the bottleneck. Um, if you consider the fact that many search advertisers, and this includes companies that are surprisingly large, don't even track conversion data, then you kind of get an idea of the amount of inertia that's going on. Where, for example, I'll give some real life examples. I've worked with clients at B2B companies that don't know what the value of their own leads. We say, okay, in order to figure out what we have to bid and what we have to pay for a lead, Mr. Advertiser, Mr. Client, you need to tell me what's the value of a lead. And that naturally requires them to know what their close rate is, what their average transaction value is, and they say, well, we don't know those things right now. So in order to decide on the right KPIs, they first have to have the internal measures and KPIs to inform the what we use on the search side.
I think things get way more exciting when you are not able to easily measure everything. But the wrong approach is probably saying, I'm not able to measure this, so I don't take it into account. It's probably way smarter to say, okay, if I'm not able to measure it, I'm at least trying to estimate things and incorporate or include these things into the optimization equation instead of just ignoring things.
Yes. That's exactly the advice that I give to clients. If they don't know, for example, what their close rate is, I say, well, let's start by estimating it. And then when we get the data, we'll get closer and closer to reality. Just like you would do if you were conducting the same kind of exercise without search in the equation.
David, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and we share similar mindset.
We do.
Thanks.